I'm Nan McKay, and I would like to introduce you today to Bill Barberg. Bill is the president and founder of InsightFormation, Inc. He has a deep background in the field of strategy management for organizations and cross sector coalitions. He's trained and coached several cutting edge and nationally recognized efforts in both communities and states to improve population health and improve the social detriments of health. He's one of the founders of the Population Health Learning Collaborative, and he is the lead organizer and moderator of the summit. So, welcome, Bill Barberg.
Well, thank you very much, Nan. I appreciate the opportunity.
Bill, in 2019, you helped launch the Population Health Learning Collaborative. So, what's the mission of the collaborative?
It's really about bridging the gap between the information that's out there and the kind of capabilities that are needed in communities to help improve the health and well-being of people. We have amazing training on clinical care and on developing new pharmaceutical products and medical devices. But I think many of us just recognize that good health doesn't just happen in the doctor's office, it happens in the community. But the need for training, just how do you help communities become healthier, involves many different types of people, different types of organizations. And as we worked with communities, we saw that they didn't have good ways of getting the best information on what they could do. So whether it was how do you best have upstream prevention of chronic disease or deal with the multifaceted complexities of addressing addiction through prevention, harm reduction, treatment, and recovery, or dealing with the social determinants of health, of housing, of education, and jobs. These are complex issues, and they required a lot of knowledge transfer to enable people to do that more effectively, but there just weren't good mechanisms to do that. If you'd have a great conference, but maybe one or two people from a community would show up, and they didn't have the way to share what they learned with all the people, or different people need to learn different things. So in discussing with different consultants, different technology vendors, we just began saying technology can help get information to people. Let's try to do that to really help create a better world for us, for our kids, for generations to come. And so we set out to try to identify a lot of the most promising innovations, tools, technologies, and we saw those as ingredients that many people weren't aware of, because small, innovative social entrepreneurs with technology, or practitioners that are doing innovative things and have found some ways to have some breakthroughs with their little group in their community, typically didn't have the resources to get that information out to their peers across the country. And even if they did, they'd only end up with fragmented pieces. So two of the things that we really felt were going to be important were this idea of system thinking, that you had to look at how do you put together these different puzzle pieces and not just look to go find an evidence-based intervention, get some funding, and do that one little thing. It would require system thinking, and it also would require strategy management, because you were encouraging communities to take on strategies that had a lot of different pieces to it. And oftentimes they'd feel that's just overwhelming, but that's because they weren't using the techniques and tools to manage big, multifaceted, long-term strategies. So those have been some of the key things we've tried to bring into this mix as well.
Well, why did you decide to create the Solutions Summit for the housing crisis?
Well, when we first started, we thought we would do a half day or a 3/4 day event, and that's what we did in 2019 for our kind of kickoff workshop. And we had about, I think, 12 speakers over, I think, 5.5 hours. But then I basically learned about the technology platforms for online summits that made it quite easy to have lots of different speakers and have participants come in and choose their schedules, and a lot of functionality to do bigger and better events. So we decided about a year ago that we wanted to do a summit for 2020 rather than just the workshop, the online workshop that we did in 2019. And so we did a survey of people of which issue regarding community health and population health was most challenging, or were they most concerned about. And the whole issue of housing cost, housing insecurity, homelessness was one that rose to the top of the list. And it was something I've been passionate about for a long time. My background's in economics. And so I've always felt that the housing issue is such a big factor in local economies and individuals' well-being and building wealth and reducing disparities, that I was glad to see that that was shared by the participants when we did the survey. So we initially said, let's do an innovation summit. We'd come across many different people like Rock USA doing resident-owned communities among manufactured housing communities, or Share Sonoma County that had done an amazing home sharing program, or new types of construction and new business models. So I'd seen enough really innovative things out there that we said, we need to get visibility to these. So we spent several months networking and interviewing and finding the most innovative, scalable, economically viable things that we could find. And those were the basis of what we now refer to as the Innovation Summit that we did in August and September. As we did that, people would say, this is great, but it's a little overwhelming. There's now so many possibilities. And we also kept discovering more and more. So we decided that it would be really helpful to begin organizing these different ingredients into kind of recipes, or how you could bring them together so that they're stronger and better than they are just as individual ingredients. So that's where we felt that doing a solution summit would really be the next step. And we very ambitiously decided to do it on a short time frame, because with the pandemic and the eviction crisis and the number of people going into foreclosure, we felt it was very important to try to get this information out to as many community leaders, healthcare leaders, housing people as possible, so they could take action quickly rather than wait until a lot of damage had been done and there were more pieces to pick up. And some of them are going to be hard to pick up if we wait too long.
Well, I've been in affordable housing for over 50 years, and I am really learning something as I do these interviews, learning a lot about things that I didn't know. So I'm sure everybody, if they have the opportunity to hear this, will enjoy it. So what are some of the primary takeaways that you would like attendees to have?
So I think one is how important it is for a community, a county, a region, a metropolitan area to have a housing strategy that isn't just looking at what do we do with the homeless encampment that's shown up under the bridge, or what do we do with getting a new affordable housing complex added to our city for people who are real struggling with their finances and can't afford a place to live, or looking at an isolated issue of how do we deal with people who are going to get evicted in February and March. Instead, to say that there's systems of how housing work, and that you can really turn housing into an economic engine that is really good for the community, much like we did after World War II. But we only did that basically for white families. And there's ways, not exactly the same as we did then, but there's ways that housing can become an economic engine. There's ways that we can bring about housing that is much more financially viable, economically sensible, and use the money that I think we do need to spend money on helping people. But there's ways that if we do a strategy, that money can go a lot further and do a lot more good. So I think having a strategy is number one, and being urgent about it, because there's financial forces with a lot of the consolidation of wealth and that's moving into the housing space that will make things more difficult and create problems for the entire local economy if communities aren't thinking about that. So there's an urgency and the need for a strategy, and a need to really think outside the traditional boxes. The traditional organizations oftentimes aren't thinking about what's possible. They're looking at the way they do things or how they make money or how they grow their success in a system that frankly isn't doing a very good job of meeting the needs, the housing needs in the community. And lastly, that every type of organization can have a role. Every employer, every faith community, every neighborhood, just individuals, they don't have to solve the problem by themselves, but they can be a part of a strategy that helps build a strong, thriving community that has greater justice, greater equality, but not necessarily building independence. It's about creating a thriving local kind of housing and economic ecosystem.
Well, you mentioned the idea of the evictions as they're coming up and that becoming a crisis as it comes closer to the period of time where they are going to have to come up with a whole lot of money rather than just a little bit of money, because if they haven't been paying, then all of a sudden it's going to come due. So what do you think is going to be the outcome of some of that?
So I think one of the reasons we wanted to do this yet in November is to give people a chance, community leaders, funders, people who have control over different block grants or however the funding comes, to be able to make what we think are going to be wiser decisions that will help for the longer term and be thinking about the implications. There's a definite need to help people out who, through no fault of their own, are in a very difficult financial situation due to the pandemic or just other life circumstances. But simply just paying rent for people may, in many cases, be putting huge amounts of money into the pockets of predatory investors and landlords who then are even more motivated to get into that business because now they're getting that government money, rather than saying, can that money be used in a way that might support converting apartment complexes to cooperatives, where now the people you're trying to help become an owner, and instead of just a big chunk of rental subsidy, it might be part of a down payment for them to take over ownership. I think there's a huge amount of available rooms, bedrooms in homes with empty nesters and individuals that, with the right type of programming, can be a wonderful win-win, where the person who's moving in has stable housing in a much better situation, and the person they're moving in with has a good homemate that can be a win-win. And the examples that we're seeing where that is done well, it's so beneficial, and you're now using perhaps some subsidy dollars to help someone not just be in a shelter or not just be able to stay in their apartment for another 3 months and then get evicted 3 months later, but you're tapping into resources that are win-win. So some of the sessions we have in the Solution Summit are what we call the rapid response sessions. And those are looking at things that could be done. And I just shared some examples of responding more quickly. And another expression that I have is let's not bail out the slumlords, let's buy them out. On the other hand, you have to be looking, there's a lot of mom and pop landlords or even larger housing places that you don't want to go under. You want to support the ones that are being good citizens and help them become better. If you're going to be providing some support and subsidy and bailing them out, let's use that as a way to help them become better citizens in this housing strategy, better corporate citizens, better landlords, better property management firms and such, rather than just keeping them alive, especially those that that don't have the best interests of the residents or the neighborhoods in mind.
What do you personally feel are the maybe top 3 most important actions that we should take to mitigate the housing crisis?
I think number 1 is you've got to invest the time to learn about the possibilities. If people just say, I have an immediate crisis, I need money, and it's all about just give me more money, they're not going to be developing the best course of action for the most benefit for their community. And everyone's busy. The people who are working with housing are under so much stress. But what you learn in what the possibilities are can really help get you on a much stronger course. Second is bring in your allies. And unfortunately, some communities have established housing coalitions and they bring people together, but then they don't know what to do. Bring those people together. The Solution Summit's a great way to equip them with ideas and knowledge so they don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I think look for opportunities to leverage underutilized resources. And that could be home sharing as one example. There's no one solution for this. They could be leveraging technology and relationships that people might have that aren't primarily about housing, but they could become part of a housing strategy. So those are some of the top of mind things.
What do you think are the biggest challenges in taking those actions?
Unfortunately, there's a lot of financial incentives for things that aren't good for the long term of the community. It's a little bit like in healthcare. If all of the doctors and hospitals make money for doing procedures, they're not as motivated to keep people healthy upstream. And in the same way in housing, a lot of the systems have developed so that the people who make money, the people who are investing money and profiting, aren't necessarily looking at how do you solve the housing crisis. It's how do you make money on the housing crisis or the housing industry. And so it takes some leaders that are willing to step back and say, we need to look at what's best for not only the individuals, but the community. And that's where people seeing that their fates are much more intertwined than they might think. And I think the pandemic has helped us see that. But people are used to being driven by where they make money or get power and other things, or that they want to just take care of themselves or their organization. And we're not going to be as successful if we don't take that effort to begin to work together. And that takes system leadership, it takes good community leadership, and it takes some upfront investment. So I would hope that the foundations, the philanthropic organizations could move more quickly in some cases to help fund some of that collaborative work. And as money comes in through the federal government, whether it's in some version of the HEROES Act or whatever, will hopefully come quickly because money is desperately needed. Some of that money will be used to help plan and invest in a more systematic approach that will allow actions that address both the short-term crisis and help with the long-term underlying problems, rather than just a quick short-term reaction to an immediate problem that might actually make the underlying problem worse.
Well, the speakers really cover a wide range on their innovative thoughts and ideas. Will these sessions be available after the summit?
Absolutely. In fact, we hope that when people come to the sessions on the 17th, 18th, and 19th of November, that will just give them a taste. And for an individual, it's only $195 to get 2 years of access to about 70 different sessions, it's like a graduate school degree practically, for $195 for an individual after it starts. That's the full price. The pre-summit price is still $180 till Tuesday morning. And but even better is for what we call the all community, all access pass. And that allows the community, for each one of those, they essentially get a coupon for the summit platform that allows 100 people in their community to get that all access pass. And that means for the next 2 years, they can say, oh, we have issues with zoning. Here's 5 different sessions on different ways to address that, or financing, or home sharing, or accessory dwelling units, or construction and ownership models. They'll have this wealth of information because we didn't just put out a call for speakers and randomly pick people. We set out to say, what are the key areas that need to be addressed? And then we set out to find the top experts and innovators and practitioners in the country to present on each one of those. So we've really tried to make this a valuable resource going forward that people will be able to access on demand.
Well, Bill, it was a pleasure doing the videos and the podcasts on the conference. So Thank you for all the time and effort that you have put into all of this to bring it together.
Well, you're welcome, and I appreciate you helping get it out to the people who need to hear about it.
Thank you.